By the time settlers crossed deeper into native territory, something had changed. The old ways of fighting, isolated resistance, scattered defense, individual treaties, had failed too many times. Across forests and river valleys, leaders started speaking to one another. Messengers traveled dangerous paths carrying warnings, plans, and shared memory. For the first time in generations, tribes who had once been rivals sat together, not as enemies, but as nations under threat. This terrified the colonies, because isolated tribes could be crushed. United nations could not. One of the most powerful responses to expansion came through confederacies, alliances built not on conquest, but on survival. These alliances shared intelligence, coordinated resistance, and supported one another when settlers attacked. For the first time, the frontier slowed. Settlements were abandoned, supply lines were attacked. Militias struggled to defend vast territories. Fear returned to the colonies, something they thought they had eliminated. Colonial leaders responded the only way they knew how. They escalated. More soldiers were deployed. More rewards were offered for native scalps. Laws were passed legalizing mass punishment and forced removal. Violence became policy, and yet the resistance held. What made these confederacies so dangerous was leadership. Native leaders emerged who understood both worlds, who knew settler tactics, weapons, and psychology. They recognized that this war was not just about land, but about identity, memory, and future generations. They refused treaties that offered temporary peace in exchange for permanent loss. They rejected submission disguised as protection. They demanded recognition, and the colonies refused. This stalemate reshaped everything. Settlers could no longer expand freely. The cost of land rose. Fear spread through frontier towns. Colonial propaganda painted native nations as monsters, not because it was true, but because it justified violence. Meanwhile, native nations paid a terrible price for unity. Retaliation was brutal. Villages were targeted specifically because they were part of alliances. Leaders were hunted. Families were punished for decisions made by councils. The message was clear. Unity would be met with extermination. This episode exposes a critical moment often erased from history books. Native resistance was not random or primitive. It was strategic, it was organized, it was political, and it nearly worked. But the colonies had something the native nations did not: time and endless reinforcement. Ships kept arriving, weapons improved, settler populations multiplied. The balance began to tilt again. Yet even as pressure mounted, the resistance left a permanent mark. The colonies learned that native nations were not going to vanish quietly. Every mile of expansion would be paid for in blood, and this fear would shape colonial policy for decades.